Okay, the thing that sparked my interest in the flipped classroom initially was that there was just so much content knowledge to present and not enough class time to present it in. And so I had looked online and I saw some information on the Khan Academy and how they were using online learning and to deliver content knowledge. And I thought that if we could deliver a lot more of the content knowledge out of the classroom, it would free up classroom time for more engaging student activities. I started using it probably back around 2012 or 2013, so I guess it's been 6 or 8 years already. Yeah, I do use to some extent, some of the flipped concept models materials in all of my classes. Not as much in some as in others, but in all my classes. I do present some of the content knowledge out of the classroom. Yeah, so the main thing is, I think, to get students to buy into doing the work on their own out of the classroom, because they're so used to getting the information presented to them in the classroom, is to give point values to the things that they do out of the classroom. So students typically have to read the chapter that we're going to be covering, and then I'll go through the learning objectives to that chapter and make 4 or 5 open-ended response questions to the learning objectives. So they know what it is they're supposed to get from the chapter when they read it, answer those open-ended questions, and then take a quiz on those open-ended questions before they come to class. So they have a sense of what it is that they don't know when they come to class. And that's the best prepared student, to come into my classroom knowing what it is that they don't know that they should know. Yeah, so the main is with the open-ended homework questions and the quizzes. And the quizzes are online quizzes where they'll know whether they got it right or wrong right when they take it. And I typically give students a few times to take the quiz so they can go back and look at what they got wrong, go back into the textbook, reread that section and get a better sense of it. But often there are some questions where students just don't get the right information from reading it on their own. And that's where it opens up more valuable time in the classroom. So engaging classroom activities that we do, I still do some instructor-led lectures, and where I'll talk about some of the go into more depth in some of the more complex issues that they're supposed to be learning. But I like to get more peer-to-peer conversation going where students can talk amongst themselves. So I'll present a scenario that gives practical relevance to what it is that they've learned outside of the classroom. And then they can talk about that in the classroom. So one of the things that students always ask me is, how is this going to be important to my career? What's on the test is always a big question, but this doesn't always help that. But with their career, I give them scenarios where what they just learned is important for their career decisions. And then they talk about that amongst themselves and with me. So initially, the challenges are preparing both for in-classroom activities and online activities, all in the same semester. That's a challenge for the professor. Also, there's a lot more work for the professor to grade. So if I have open-ended questions for homework questions, there's a lot more things that I have to go through. It was a lot easier to do the flipped classroom when my classroom sizes were smaller. The program has been growing over the past 8 years, and so the class sizes are getting bigger and bigger, making it more challenging to be able to implement some of these open-ended questions where I have maybe 2 or 3 paragraphs in each essay from each student to read. So that's a challenge on my side. And the challenge on the student side is getting them to buy into doing work on their own. They're so used to having information presented to them. Sometimes they feel that even directed learning outside of the classroom is asking them to do too much work or more of the work. So they have to understand that there's a mixture of both responsibilities in teaching and learning on both the student side and the professor side. Well, I think the biggest benefits are that students can be prepared and know what it is that they don't know when they come into the classroom. So they already know what questions they need to ask of me when they have me right in front of them. I think that's the biggest benefit, that they know what it is that they don't know, because then we can spend class time. And after I've done this for a few years, I pretty much know what it is in the text that the students aren't going to get and what they're going to be coming to class needing to know. And so it makes it a lot easier for me as I go along. But initially, it was really interesting to see from the students what it was that they just couldn't get on their own just from reading the textbook and trying to answer the questions from the learning objectives. I think the flipped class model, when I go to conferences, the biggest complaint I hear from faculty is that there's just more and more competencies that students have to have, and there's more and more information we have to present, and they're always faculty are complaining about just not having enough class time to cover all of that information. So I think the flipped model is a great opportunity to get students to work on their own education, at the same time providing a space for the professor to answer those questions that are difficult for students to get on their own. So I think it's a great model to use in the classroom.